Anyways, I'm Dave Riddle with the Falcon Group. I'm the director of the West Palm Beach office. Eric said we have offices in Miami and in West Palm to support, and so we kind of support Broward County out of both offices. So as we proceed ahead, just by show of hands, how many folks have already completed their SIRS and milestone requirements? Okay, handful. How many of you have yet to complete it but still need to? A few more. Mess with me. All right. So, just as a quick overview of what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about milestones and SIRS and understanding, but to kind of step back a little bit as more of an overview. One of the things that is, at least was mentioning, the legislature has finished their session for the year, short of calling back a special session, which we definitely do not anticipate. The laws for the year are what they are. And in regards to the milestone structural integrity reserve studies. So we're still looking at a deadline at the end of the year, December 31st, 2024. I will leave it to the smart attorneys to put the finer point on it, but the structural integrity reserve studies pretty much are due at the same time. There's some argument, potentially the timing there, but as a general rule, it's going to be due by the end of the year. And that's kind of, when I say this, kind of think an audible gasp a little bit. I will tell you from my experience, even if the legislature at this point said, oh, we're just kidding, not going to happen. I will tell you right now, not highly unlikely. But just join with me in that world for a second. I can tell you these requirements are not going to go away. So we've kind of woken the sleeping bear a little bit. I have written more letters to insurance companies and mortgage companies over the last 2 years than probably ever in my career. And so now what we're seeing a lot of when it comes time to sell a unit, they want to see the SIRS and they want to see the milestones. When it comes time to insure, they want to see the SIRS and the milestones. And a little off topic here, but one of the things that if you're dealing with the conventional mortgage marketplace, the FHA up until the end of last year wouldn't admit this, but there is something called a blacklist. And so from rumors out there, again, it's kind of they categorically denied it until they were pushed into a corner late earlier this year. They were, in theory, supposed to kind of make at least some access, at least you should have been able to know if you were on it. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened. I know about it because I'm working with the property up in Palm Beach that made it to the list. It took us a while to even figure out why they were on the list. So we've corrected what the issue was. However, we're still trying to figure out how to get off the list. So this is something that's definitely here to stay, and just will have to be addressed. So a little bit of the history. Unfortunately, I'm sure all of us are aware of what caused the push recently with this, down on Surfside, and also a little bit of an advantage for the crowd here. When I give this presentation, especially when I give it on the west coast of the Tampa-St. Pete area, and I talk about Miami-Dade and Broward, and they're like, but we're in Collier County. What does Miami-Dade and Broward have to do with us here? Well, Miami-Dade in later years, Broward has, as you're well aware, a 40-year program, now the 30-year program, at least in Miami-Dade, which is really kind of what the state looked after as far as the milestones. Again, I think I covered this in here, but I'm maybe getting ahead of myself to understand the structural integrity reserve study and the milestone are similar but different. So the way to look at it is your milestone is a snapshot. What does your building look like today? What needs to be done today in a very short period of time to make it safe for the next 10 years. Whereas the structural integrity reserve study is more like a calendar. it's looking out. It's a more of a planning document, as any reserve study is, than technical document. So again, this is more for outside of Broward, Miami-Dade, because we've been doing it here for quite a while. Unfortunately for that, the impetus also was another collapse back in 1974. The DEA agent office down in Miami collapsed, killing a number of agents. A gentleman who, engineer at that time, by the name of John Pistorati, who's no longer with us, was heavily involved in that. He also helped develop the Miami-Dade 40-year program that the state is looking at. So pretty much everywhere in the state of Florida now, you have to do this, no matter where you go. So if you, are responsible for properties outside of Broward, Miami-Dade, are you getting bad feedback? I guess we have a soundtrack now. So again, this is something that is, every county in Florida is required to do this. Oh, there's my slide. So again, I always like to say, we're comparing apples and oranges when we talk about what's the difference between a milestone and the structural integrity reserve study. They involve very similar inspections and evaluations. Okay, they're working on it. Okay.
Sorry, guys.
They lost the mic completely.
Really?
Yeah. Mic's out.
Okay, turn the mic on. I just asked them to make the mic a little louder. It's okay. They'll come back.
Louder, quieter, hey, one way or the other.
Turn the mic off.
Go ahead. Try now, David.
Hello. Is it back on? There.
Oh,
There we go. Now we're back.
Awesome.
All right.
Just have to keep you guys on your toes a little bit.
So again, the little bit of it kind of presupposes a little bit of the requirements. So, what buildings are covered in the milestone inspection? In a little bit of history, again, Miami-Dade, Broward County had a 40-year inspection. Kind of an interesting story as to how that came about, how 40 years was a magical number. Started doing some research on that, thinking surely there's some science behind this. Unfortunately, the science was that in 1974, when the Miami DEA agency collapsed, the building was 42 years old. So they thought, 40 would be a nice number. And that's literally how they came up with 40 years. There wasn't a lot of science to it. And I don't know that there's much more science to it than 30 years, to be honest with you. Other than Surfside was over 40. It was undergoing its 40-year inspection when it collapsed, which brings up another point I get asked about all the time. Well, if they're basing this program on Miami-Dade, Surfside was in Miami-Dade and it collapsed. So what good is this program? Well, I'll tell you, at the time when Surfside collapsed, I personally had 3 associations whose 40-year inspections were literally years overdue. And the local AHJ didn't care. They didn't enforce it, and when they got it, they basically got the report, they shoved it in the drawer, and not a lot of public, and also the difference is that with the Broward 40-year, I would give it to the association, and then the association would file with the AHJ. Now under the milestone inspection, I'd give a copy to the association, but I, as the engineer, am responsible for filing it with the AHJ. So that's some of the reason, why, and the program was good if they had worked on it. And the other thing with Surfside is not only were they a little bit behind in their inspections, they were way behind in their maintenance and improvements that they needed to do. Structural integrity reserve study is a little different than the milestone because, again, I guess going back to the NSI, requirements are now under the state law 30 years unless the local authority having jurisdiction believes because of environmental impact, i.e. proximity to water, that it needs to be done earlier, which they can pull it back to 25 years. So if you're a little bit further to the east here and right on the beach, chances are you're going to be doing 25 years versus if you're further out, maybe western area, you're really likely going to do 30 years. And the other thing too, here in Pompano anyways, I've talked with the AHJ, very similar to Miami-Dade, and so we're talking about this just coming in, at least in Pompano, they're going to accept their report form as the requirement from the state. So this is kind of it's an interesting program because it's a state required program,